Awesome to welcome Queen's University of Charlotte head coach Bart Lundy. Bart Lundy enters the ninth season of his second stint at Queen's University and his 14th year overall as the winningest coach in Queen's basketball history. After leading his team to a sixth consecutive NCAA tournament appearance in 2020-21, Lundy holds a record at Queen's of 303-99 for a 75% winning percentage and an overall coaching record of 399-186 for a 68% winning percentage in 19 seasons as a head coach in NCAA Division I and Division II. Coach Lundy, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm awesome. And, I've followed your team and your career and your success for a while now. And in preparing for this, obviously, I learned a little bit more, and that's that you worked with Buzz Williams for a little bit at Marquette and had great success there as well. And it's pretty unique as well that you're one of the coaches that returned to the same place they were a head coach previously and continued your success. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I have a few stories. I like to say I'm a part of the past, the present, and hopefully the future here at Queens. But we have, I was gone for 11 years, and I was the head coach here when I was 25. And in fact, we had some folks from Adidas here this morning, and I told them the story. When I was leaving, I was taking the job at High Point University, and Hugh McCall, who's the founder of Bank of America, he was the head of our board of trustees. And we presented him with a ball. We had just gone to the Final Four, and I'd already taken the High Point job. And when I gave him the ball, he said, "It's just too bad Bart's not going to be able to coach in our new gym, our new facility." Well, 11 years later, I came back 3 days before this facility opened. So I was gone, but I got the last laugh on that.
That's pretty cool. That's great. And you've continued the success and had great success at Queens. And we're going to talk about one of those reasons for that success. And that is the boot camp philosophy. So maybe first, just give us an idea. What is a boot camp?
Well, for us, and I think, some people are familiar with Buzz Williams, and Buzz might not want me to give a lot of this out. But the Buzz Williams boot camp, and I think he got it from Billy Gillespie and Bill Self, and I don't know how far it goes back, but it goes back a long way, at least the originations. So the way we do it, it is builds a team. It's kind of an all or nothing. Everything that we do is a win or a loss. If you win, you continue to progress. If you lose, then there's some type of a punishment, or you have to do it again. If it's say we don't make a sprint, we would add time to that sprint and try to do it again. But really it accomplishes two things in my opinion. Number one, it gets our guys in great shape, and it does it in a way where they obviously it's difficult, but it does it in a way where they are pulling together, and there's as much to it mentally as there is physically. And then it builds our team, because they have to figure out, all right, who's tired and cannot run a solo, it might be a 2-man sprint and there's a solo, who this is a fast time, who needs to be in a certain line, and they have to figure all that out, and they're under some duress when they do it. So it's we laugh, it's kind of a science experiment at this point. But I don't do anything as a coach that is not directly related to basketball. So we don't run on the track, so everything that we do is, a piece of our defense. It's, running sprints that I believe get us in game shape. So it gets progressively more difficult and earlier in the morning. So this morning we started at 5:17 a.m.
That's early, Coach. That's early.
Yeah.
And then, so there's so many questions obviously to come from this. I mean, the first thing is, you mentioned shared suffering makes a team to a certain extent, but let's just be clear. I mean, this is a more modernized version of this concept, right? This isn't run them till they puke type of mentality, right? You already referred to, you're trying to make it as basketball specific as possible. So can you talk a little bit about that modernizing of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do 6 sessions. It is I kind of know at this point how far we can push them. We get them with, the way Division II works, we still start official practice on October 15th. So we can do 8 hours a week. So some of that is team practice, but we start with individual workouts. So we have a four-man group individual workouts, and they really go along the same concept where we're doing basketball specific. It might be mic and drill, but you've got 30 seconds to do mic and drill, and a big guy might need to get 22 or 23 in 30 seconds, whereas a guard might need 18. And they win or lose, and they win or lose as a group. And if they win, they just keep going. They lose, they have a sprint. And so we start getting them in shape for boot camp in the individuals. So it's a very gradual process, and we're very delicate with our work to rest times. I mean, it seriously is a science experiment at this point. But our trainers are involved, and if we have somebody with an injury, we let them with our trainer pick, all right, what can we do? What can they do with the team? Because it really is a team concept in everything we do. So, you don't want to go halfway through and drop out. So if there's an injured player, we're very cognizant about what we put them in and what we don't put them in. But it really does build our team, and our guys build unbelievable bonds. We went 4 straight years without losing in November and December. And I really believe that boot camp had a lot to do with that.
So you referenced the science, and that's got to be a part of this in this modern version of it, because we do have this method to be able to quantify workloads and to be able to, again, at the end of the day, make sure our athletes are safe, both mentally and physically. So can you just give us an idea of some of the things that they're monitoring while they're doing this?
Sure. So we have, we might start with basic, what we call around the horn, warm up, passing drill, layup drills. We go from there to some defensive stations, just like anyone would do. They're 3-minute stations. You might have 30-second work on, 45 off, simple things, rotations. We have zigzag. We have a box slide where it's closeout slide. But everything has an exact time of work and a time of rest. So, and then we get to some sprints, and the sprints are all, for the most part, 2-man or 3-man sprints. So it might be a half and back, a down and back. And if, say this morning we had 12 guys, so we might have 6 lines, and we might do 7 of those. But then halfway through, I might say, okay, now you need 7 lines. So now you've got 5 lines and 2 solos. But the sprints literally are a 2-man sprint. So you get partial rest there, and then you get to rest the time of the sprint. So you're at least getting 1.5 rest to the time of the sprint. So, it's difficult, but it's not anything that's impossible.
So we talked about the goal of, obviously there's a fitness, strength and conditioning component, there's a basketball component, and obviously there's a mental toughness component. With that mental toughness component, I'm also wondering then, which would be a more modern version of this, is that are you doing anything to provide coping strategies for your players, whether it's through working with mental skills trainers in advance, or just cueing them with these different things? Because I got to imagine, again, that's part of this process.
Yeah, it is. I'm very fortunate here at Queens. We have amazing sports psychologists here on our campus. We have a nutritionist that's working with our guys. We have an amazing training staff. So we are covering every base with our guys. Now, I do think there are some positive mental benefits to this, especially for young players, because when they come in as freshmen, and you'll know this probably from your own experience, Chris, you go to school and you don't have anybody watching you, and you stay up all night and you sleep during the day. So part of the reason we do everything in the morning is I like to reference them as newborn babies. They get their days and their nights mixed up. which can cause more mental stress with that lack of sleep regimen than anything else that they do in their lives. So part of it is the morning. We do some things called unlocking doors before we ever start our preseason program. I believe that that this is a total. Our preseason has less to do with basketball and more to do with learning about each other, helping each other learn what level we can work to. How many guys play with each other for 4 years and don't know how many brothers and sisters their teammates have. So we do a lot of things where, we're spending a lot of time with our guys. There are tons of rewards in boot camp. I think people think boot camp and they think, oh, it's a beat down, but it really is a rejoicing of what they can accomplish. And it's less pressure than it is reward, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And it's fascinating to get a modern look at this, and maybe just the nuts and bolts. How long does this last, and how many days in a row do you go in that period?
Yeah. So that's where you've got to be really smart about, how you administer it. And it goes on feel. So yesterday we went 2 days in a row this week. We went Monday and Tuesday, and we'll do some basketball stuff tomorrow, but there's no boot camp. And then our final boot camp will be on Thursday. So the 2 in a row, yes, on Monday we went really hard, and they did great and showed a lot of leadership. This morning was way more basketball, more defensive station breakdown work, more work on our offense, and less of just the pounding and the brutal conditioning stations of doing continuous closeouts and zigzags and all that. So you've got to be smart and you've got to be balanced with it. But I've been doing this a long time now, so I think the football guys have it figured out. They don't get them injured between Monday and Saturday, so they can play in the game on Sunday. And boot camp is counterproductive if you're breaking them down mentally to the point where it's destructive, or if you're getting them injured. So, I wouldn't suggest somebody just go do boot camp to do boot camp.
No, not at all. And yeah, and it's well planned and it's organized, and we can tell all this isn't something just random. You have a plan to it. Another thing I've learned through Eastern philosophy that's helped in a lot of these different things is this idea of setting an intention. And I'm imagining that's a part of this process as well. At the beginning, at the end, there's certain ritual or ceremony that helps kick it off and helps end it. And that's a part of this process, isn't it? Yeah.
It's there are so many rituals within this, Chris, that, we could do the whole podcast on rituals. So it really is something that, we like to tell people we have our own cult, and our guys really believe that. And they do learn to work together, and they do learn to work hard. But that's only a part of it. The conditioning is only a part of it. It really is teamwork. It really is getting to know each other, and really building deeper bonds than just, guys on a basketball team.
So a lot of these boot camps that I researched a little bit were originally not with a basketball, but I love the idea that you've added a basketball to it. And, to a certain extent, you've created this team atmosphere around conditioning and basketball work at the same time. So can you give us some idea of some of the other basketball drills? You already talked about Mikan and zigzag and different ones like that. What are some others?
Well, when we start with the individual workouts that build us into boot camp, it is all basketball. It could be rips. So, throw to the coach, go to the elbow, rip back to the middle. But everything is timed and scored. So they have a goal in mind, and they have a clock that's moving. So their focus is there, and they get a win and loss for everything. We start with jump rope. So they jump rope for 2 minutes, but they, if it's a group of 4, they might have 10 misses. You can't have more than 10 mess ups. And then we go straight from there to ball handling, and there'll be a goal. So it's really just fundamental basketball. It's just a time and a score. and we've been doing it long enough to know what's productive, what's not productive, what makes them better, and what fits within our program and what we value.
And within this boot camp period or phase, are there you're not doing other basketball practice, you're not doing other individual workouts, or are you still doing those too?
Yeah, once we start boot camp's only for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So and we're doing 6 sessions. So when I was with Buzz, I think we did 12 sessions. So we do 6 here, which isn't bad. So it's really 3 last week and 3 this week. So it gets earlier by 15 minutes. So on Thursday, our last one will be at 5:02, which if you want to know the hardest part in our guys' mind, it's getting up and being ready at 5:02 in the morning. But that's part of being on a team and having some discipline. And we're fortunate. We've got an elite swim program here that they've won 6 national championships on the men's and women's side. Both 6 in a row. It's incredible. And we've got Olympians, and we're coming in at 5:02 and they're jumping in the pool, the cold pool, at 5:02. So there's discipline and there's great culture all around us. And I think our guys observe that, see it, and digest it. So I don't know what our original question was, but it's only 6 sessions, and we're doing basketball practice in between. So we'll go 5 days a week, give them 2 days off. So there'll be some other basketball on the other 2 days.
Yeah, it's great just getting this perspective on it. Then you talked about doing teamwork stuff within this. Then when you talked about like competition, winning and losing, is it individually based or is it sometimes team based? And then with that, do the teams change all the time, or are they with the same team for the whole boot camp phase?
No, they change constantly. And most of that is up to them. So they've got to make the decisions on who goes where and what the strengths are, and who's pulling more weight. We track. So if you're running a solo sprint, if it's a 2-man sprint, but we have 7 lines and there's 5 2-man groups and 2 solos, if that makes sense. Then we track, who's running the solos, and as the times get faster, we've got leaders on the team, and you see it emerge, and they'll go, okay, hey BJ, you're going to run the 34-second solo because you can't make the 31-second solo. So they have a certain amount of time to figure all those aspects out. So whether it's an individual event or a team event, they are really responsible for figuring it out and talking to each other. We give them timeouts. They earn timeouts throughout boot camp. They have to confirm the timeout with a free throw. So we have leaders each day. So it really is pretty in depth, and they are very hands-on.
It's fun to hear about this. And, it is sometimes this simple. Like, people ask about how you develop leadership, and to a certain extent, developing leadership is simply putting your players in positions where they have to lead. And that's what you're doing in this, where they decide matchups, they decide who's to run what, all these different things. This is leadership development, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you a great example. And so I've got a point guard, and he's started here basically since he stepped on campus. Unbelievable worker, fantastic kid, obviously a good player, but has really struggled to find his voice as a leader. So now he is, because of COVID, he's again a junior, but he's 4th year in the program. He'll leave here as the all-time winningest player in program history. Granted that he stays healthy, and knock on wood. So we're in boot camp, and I give them the choice of, I think we missed the free throw, if I can get the scenario right. We missed the free throw, and I said, okay, I'll give you double or nothing to get the timeout, 1 more free throw. But if you miss, you add a sprint, and we were at the final little section of sprints, and they're the most difficult sprints. We add a sprint. So it's double or nothing, but the double is we add a sprint. But if you make the free throw, you get the timeout. So they had used the timeout because they couldn't agree on what to do. So they're all gathered around. Some are on the floor. they're taking their rest, but they're all talking. And finally, Kenny silences the whole group and tells them exactly what they're going to do. And I thought to myself, Kenny's finally found his voice as a leader, and he's without a doubt the leader of our team. But that little bit of stress and the indecision of the team brought that out, and that's what you want to see.
Yeah, it's a great example. And we talked about leadership. What other habits, in your opinion, are formed through this process of boot camp?
Well, I think we all have levels of work capacity that we think we're capable of. And I'll give you a great example, Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler, as a sophomore, wasn't the Jimmy Butler we know now. So he had to learn how to work, and he got to a point where he could work to this level. And then he figured out, okay, I can work to this level, and boot camp with Buzz is a little more difficult than boot camp with Coach Lundy. So Jimmy learned that he could work at a very, very high level. And then when he was coming out his senior year, he wasn't really on anyone's draft board, but he was the throw-in guy to all these NBA workouts. And the NBA guys started to figure out, okay, when this guy stops at this level, Jimmy keeps going. And I really believe that boot camp is a part of that. You learn that you have more in your tank. And I think boot camp, because of the collaborative nature of it, brings that out. You don't want to let your teammates down. I mean, you can be tired and not make the sprint for the coach, but you don't want to let your teammates down. You want to make that sprint. Hey, you're tired, I'll run the solo, and you learn what you can and can't do. And I really believe that goes a long way. That went a long way toward building what we see with Jimmy Butler now, which is he's a warrior.
He absolutely is. And I'm wondering, what are some strategies for you or for coaches who are listening to make sure that this is not something that your players feel that you're doing to them, but you're doing it for them? And that is a big distinction.
Yeah. We allow them two things. One, we sit them down and we say, okay, this is what we have. We have 6 sessions, and you guys are a big part of it. Here's why we do it. And we're not, we explain that, most of our guys want to be pros, and you guys are learning how to work. That's number one. You're learning how to work. It's going to be different than going with your trainer and a ball and going through some cones. It's not that. And then 2, we want to build you guys as a team. So we give them all the reasons that we do it. And we tell them it's up to you guys and your leadership on whether you embrace this or you don't embrace this. Obviously, we're going to do boot camp. It's a part of our program, and we tell them that in the recruiting process. And then I'm not going to sit here and say that they love getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning or they love boot camp, but without a doubt they understand the value. And so I got back here, I'm going into my 9th year. That very first one was difficult because no one understood why are we doing this. But after that, we didn't have a boot camp last year with COVID year, but after that, it's really not something that I have to tell them that we're going to do to you, because our guys understand, hey, when we finish this, we feel like we have earned the right to win. We have earned the right to be good players. And the other thing we do, and you might not love this, but we don't give them their gear until we finish. So the locker room right now until Thursday is closed. But when we finish boot camp on that last day, we open it up and all their gear is there. So it's like Christmas Day. And so there's a lot of reward. There's a lot of, we come out, they do have to get a flu shot right after the last boot camp. So after the flu shot, we get the gear.
That's great. It's a rite of passage, obviously, in that sense. And then part of these things with these rite of passages or this shared suffering is there's no point in doing it if you're not going to reference it all year. So what are some ways that you reference this experience so that your players feel empowered throughout the whole season by what they did?
Well, we reference it constantly. So our last boot camp, we will have our schedule from the scrimmages all the way through the national championship, and we'll have it printed on a huge sheet. And each of those has an activity that we're trying to win. And we will go through the schedule, and the scrimmages might be, okay, 4 guys have to get Micans. There might be, I just did it. I mean, there's all kinds of activities. So everything we've done through individuals and through the boot camp, there's going to be a piece of it in there as a game. But we go all the way through the schedule, and they can see, okay, in November, we have 3-game road stretch. Well, that's going to be pretty difficult. So those activities are difficult. And we get all the way through. And then when we get to our conference tournament, that's kind of at the end. We're kind of tired. You've got this to try to win the conference tournament championship. And then here's where the NCAA tournament is going to be. Okay, you guys have finished 27-2 in the regular season. You're a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament now. So the NCAA tournament's at our place because we host if we're the number 1 seed. At the Elite 8, we go to Indianapolis. So they get to go mentally through the entire season in that final boot camp. So it gives them, and then we hang that sheet in the locker room, and it sits there all year. And they get to see, okay, this is what we ran for boot camp in that final day.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you're connecting it to the season and connecting it to the why, which is awesome. And you also mentioned unlocking doors and this concept of bringing your players closer together. So what are some other ways that happens within that? I know when I've researched some others, they have guest speakers sometimes or different things that go with that. But what are the specific ways that you bring your team closer together?
Well, you may have run into a guy that generally is in the NBA, but his name is Dr. Joe Carr. I don't know if you've heard that name, but Dr. Carr has worked with tons of NBA teams and, LeBron James, some of the premier players. Now we can't afford to bring Dr. Carr in, but I think I've been in 6 Dr. Carr sessions that usually are 3 or 4 days with teams at Marquette, North Texas. So we take pieces of that. And really as basic as sitting in a circle, we bring a basketball. We call the basketball the cake. So if you have the cake, you can speak. And generally I'll start and I'll tell our guys personal things about me, things that have happened in my life that are, joyous, things that have happened that were tragic. And we will pass the cake. I'll tell them about my family, about where I grew up. And each guy, and this can go on for a long time, each guy will get their shot at the cake, and they start to open doors, and you've got to follow up. Sometimes things come out that you can't just leave in that room for that day. But in my experience over the years of doing opening doors, there are things in our players' lives that we have no clue about. And if you don't spend some time on that side of their lives outside of basketball, not only are you missing the connection and the significance of coaching, but you also could be missing a kid that is crying for help, or that you want to empower as a leader. You just don't know what you find out, and then they find out from each other, hey, I didn't really like that teammate, but wow, when he talked about his story is not that much different than mine. And if they just looked at each other, they'd say, oh, you don't understand me. I don't understand you. But it's funny how our stories are similar.
Are those type of sessions done separate from the actual on-court type of stuff, or are they done preceding it, after it? What's happening?
Yeah, preceding. Yeah, we make sure that we do that before we get into any kind of on the court work. But then we do a lot of follow-up with our guys. And, I spend a lot of time, I try to have at least one guy in my office for an individual meeting per day. Sometimes it's 2, but we spend a lot of time with them individually and making sure that they're doing well. Obviously that builds your team, and we talk about all types of, roles, and, but most of the time it just evolves into, how are you and your girl doing? That's part of this too. We like to think of ourselves as a player development program. We spend a lot of time now, when August 15th starts, we spend a lot of time developing their skill on the court, but we don't spend a lot of time, and we tell them this in the recruiting process. During this preseason, it's about our team, it's about getting to know each other, and it's about getting you in great shape. And I think that's a minimum I can do as a coach.
So speaking to coaches who might be considering doing something like this, maybe let's highlight some of the biggest challenges in putting this type of boot camp in place.
Well, I think if you've never seen it and been through it, it would be difficult to just create it. They might be better off going with, everybody thinks it's Navy SEAL training, or, we don't do any of that. It's completely different. I would just say, challenge your players, develop things that you probably already do. You probably already, a lot of people do defensive stations, just figure out how many can they do in 30 seconds and develop a time and a score, and hold them accountable. Don't make it unrealistic, and, that they have to, on every station, they have to go at 100% effort to make the time or the score, but make it realistic and, get your work done, and, and challenge the guys. And I think it probably would take some time. But Buzz kind of convinced me that I shouldn't give all the times and the scores out. He was very protective of all that. So I'm going to stay to that tradition. But I think anyone can develop within what they do, just a little period where the guys think it's special that they're being challenged a little bit.
Yeah, you don't have to give out the specific times, but do you have records from year to year that players are trying to beat certain times or certain records?
Yeah, I have books and books and books. And then, Buzz sends me his book from each year. I don't put that, I don't have the budget he has. So he puts this nice book together, and which is nice. I mean, they track everything. They track touches, and we do a lot of tracking of touches as well, but not in boot camp. But
you're talking touches in terms of like high fives and different things.
High fives, and yeah. So we talk about rituals. We start every day with, even before the pandemic, with hand sanitizer. Everybody gets the hand sanitizer. We call it the juice. When we break the huddle, everybody has touches. So a lot of rituals.
Yeah, it's great to hear. That's a big part of it. And the other thing is that I wanted to highlight something that you said about doing basketball specific stuff as well, which a lot of these in the past traditionally weren't involving a ball. Like a lot of high school coaches, for example, don't have time to do things separately anyways. So if you're going to do this, make sure they have a ball as much as possible, because then you're covering two things at once.
Right. We've always kept the ball out of the middle defensively, but we're going more to the Texas Tech Baylor defense, where we're really pinning it to the sideline. So you've got your goalie, your helpline guy. And so we had a drill where all it is you got 30 seconds where you're coming out to stop the drive. You're getting back, you have a closeout. So we just put combinations of activities, and you have to get 7 of them in 30 seconds, and so you're moving pretty good, but you're learning skills. And there's a coach there that's saying, hey, close out high, top shoulder, nose on the top shoulder, high early hands, whatever we're teaching, whatever skills we're teaching, but put a time and a score to it, and it becomes part of boot camp.
Least we think all of your success and your program success is just because of boot camp. There's so much more. And we're going to peel back some of the layers on some of the use of statistical categories and analytics. And maybe just give us an overview. You said that you work to always wed your system to the analytics that you want to produce. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think I texted you that over Twitter. So
yeah.
I can definitely explain it. So for us, it starts, we want to have margins. We think margins are really important. So we have 4 categories, and I think every coach has to decide what categories they want to try to create their margins. So our first margin is on the offensive glass, the offensive versus defensive glass. So our goal generally is to be up 5 on the glass. So we want to end the season with a +5 differential on the glass. So that's going to get us 4 or 5 possessions. Our turnover margin. So our goal with our turnover margin is +3. So if you can get 5 on the glass, 3 on the turnovers, now you've got a +8 margin, if that makes sense so far.
Yep.
So then we value shooting 3-point shots. 3's worth more than 2 if you can shoot it at the right clip. We had 8 new guys last year. We had basically no practice. We didn't come back till October. So we didn't hit any of these marks last year. But we want, in a perfect scenario, we want to shoot 27 threes per game at the pace that we play. And we hope to make 11. You make 10.5 or 11, you're shooting at a pretty good clip. So that will create a margin because we're going to try to defend the 3-point line at a higher clip. And then the last one is we get to the free throw line. And our best teams have been at 26, 27 free throws a game. Our goal is 25. Now, last year we were a horrific free throw shooting team, worst in my career. So how do we wed those margins to our system? Obviously, we want to shoot threes. We want to attack the rim. We've got to create a system that is going to accomplish those goals. We want to turn people over and we want to take care of the ball. We want to get after the offensive glass and make that a priority. So almost everything we do, and this is where we have to go through every piece of our program, from recruiting to our skill development to our systems, and we have to try to accomplish those, get to those numbers in those categories. Because when we get to those numbers, we win about 95% of our games. So the margins, the 3-point shooting, and the free throws. So it sounds pretty simple, but to accomplish all that, we don't want to waste any time. So if you come to our practice, it's probably you're probably going to see us working on those 4 categories, whether that's spacing offensively, but spacing with the idea that we're trying to get to the free throw line, which is getting to the rim, getting paint touches, shooting threes. We work a lot on our offensive rebounding ability, our angles, how do we get coverage on the offensive glass without giving up transition, obviously. And then, our turnover margin. So we pick up full court. So that generally takes care of itself.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear the specific and measurable goals that are such a part of your program. And successful coaches, through this podcast, I've definitely learned, and it's hit home, that they don't care about everything, but what they care about a lot. And this is another representation of that, isn't it?
Yeah. And to me, coaching for a long time, coaching a lot of games, when I look across the line, I say, wow, he's a really good coach. Generally, it's because I know exactly what he's trying to accomplish, and he's pretty good at it. And that doesn't have to be everything. Nobody's going to be great at everything. Now, in a college situation where you can recruit your players, there's no reason we can't be good at the things we want to be good at. If we want to be able to shoot free throws better than we did last year, then I need to go recruit better free throw shooters. We obviously you work on it and you improve, but you've got to recruit players to that system. And for a high school coach, I'm sure that these goals and these targets probably have to change, and you have to be pretty smart about how you attack the game, because you're not going to be able to pick your players. You're gonna take what you get, and then you got to figure out their strengths, and then how do the numbers add up? Where do I get my margins? For us, that's where we're going to get our margins.
And then with this, how are you communicating these things? Let's say post game, to players, and then possibly again post practice?
Yeah. So we have a game wrap up where we come in and they know the numbers. So I tell them that I'm going to be the expert in their game, and then I'm going to teach them how to be the expert in their own game through the analytics, through video. And so they learn to know the paint touch numbers. We're big on paint touch, box touch on the defensive end. So they can see that. They can see how many times we get to the free throw line. We don't bombard them with film. So we come in, we look at the numbers, all of our numbers that we think are important. And I think we probably have about, I'd say 14 categories that we go over post game. And they do get better and better with the numbers, especially through their career. And then we go 4 good, 4 bad, +1 on the film. And we're very targeted about what we're trying to emphasize with the good and the bad. And then +1 sometimes is good or bad, but a lot of times it's just fun, catch somebody doing something on the bench, or, try to keep it light, keep them engaged.
Well, I love this because this type of analysis obviously removes emotion from you as well, because you're delivering numbers and it's quantifiable and everything that goes with it.
Yeah. And I really learned with Buzz, I would say, you talk about coaches that are field coaches and then coaches that are analytic, and there's some that, go across both spheres. Buzz learned everything through the numbers. And that really helped me, because I think at that point in my career, I was a head coach so young that, I kind of left the numbers out. So I've really embraced what I learned from him, some of the organizational points, the games within the game. And our guys understand that. They understand that, ATOs are going to be 19% of the game. We need to win ATOs, both sides of the ball. We need to win out of bounds. So we track all those numbers. And so when we come out, they know the importance of how that impacts the final score.
And when you said this game wrap up, is that happening immediately post game, or is that like the next day having this debrief?
Yeah, it's the next day.
Yeah.
And we don't spend a ton of time. We do probably, outside the analytics that don't take a ton of time to digest and to quantify with our guys. One of the harder things that we have, and they hate when I assign it to them, but one of the assistants is going to have rebounding effort. So going back to what's important to your program, so he has to go through, and every player, did they box out? Did they check out? We box out close to the basket. We check out when they're on the perimeter. And then on the offensive end, you're either a get back or a go get. If you're a go get, did you go get? So they get an actual score after each game on their rebounding chart. And so, you've got to quantify, and you got to show them, okay, this is, we're not making our numbers on the offensive glass, and here's why. If you're going to go 3 out of 4 times, we're never going to make our numbers. And you see those numbers go up and up as the year goes on.
I love this. It's just great. And your players must embrace it too, because again, as you said, it removes some of that emotion and subjectivity to it to be able to make it real for them and measurable for them as well. And what do you feel they get the most out of in terms of understanding these margins?
I think they start to understand their own personal efficiency. And they all want to be pros, and we've had 28 guys in the 8 years sign professional contracts. So we take a lot of pride in them moving on from here. And so when I tell them we want to teach you to be the expert in your own game, so they know when we call them wood twos. So you shoot a pull up 2, and you're making 0.7 points per possession on that shot. So they understand what that means, and they can go into, synergy is an amazing thing. They can go in, and you could take any of our guys outside of our freshmen, and they can digest and explain to you all of their synergy numbers and, how they're good, how they're bad, how they can improve. So I think at the end of the day, we convince them that, hey, you want to know what the general manager of that pro team, whether it's the Chicago Bulls or the Taipei Bulls, wherever that general manager is, how are they going to look at your game? So how do you improve, what that picture looks like?
And then are you doing anything post-practice as well in terms of a debrief, specifically on the analytics side?
Yeah, we do only on live play. So we'll track the same numbers that we track in game. So we have and I got this from Buzz as well. We have a big board that that we use during timeouts. And on that board is paint touches, box touches, the score in that media, that 4-minute media, and then turnovers and rebounds. So on that board, real time, whether it's in practice or whether it's in the game, I can lay the board down and say, hey, we lost that 4 minutes. Here's why. They got it into the paint, 3 times, and we got it in once. And they know how the paint touches relate to the score. They've seen enough of the numbers to understand that. Or it's that, we gave up. There's a transition on there as well. We gave up transition, whatever it is. So we try to use that in practice, and then we use it in the games at timeouts.
Well, it's fun to learn about all this within your program. And obviously you're making smarter players to be able to understand the game better and to understand, as you said, their efficiencies. And the other part that goes with all this, from the boot camp to the analytics, is the importance of helping players succeed, not just on the court, but off the court as well, and how all these things connect to that. So can you talk about that and the value of putting them in these uncomfortable situations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell them that's our deal with them. I want them, we're at Queen's University. I think I just pulled up some. There you go. We're at Queen's University, and we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're not at Duke. But I tell them our deal is we have enough resources. We have enough folks, high-level folks around our university, that we are going to give you everything that you need to develop as a player, as a student, as a man, that you would get at Duke, except for the private plane. And we can't bring around the private plane, but we have nutritionists, we've got academic support. We put as many speakers in front of them about personal finance, about the pitfalls of being a college athlete. And a lot of that goes into our preseason as well. We try to have, at least a speaker a week to have some type of improvement. Community service, how do you give back, and how is that, important to becoming a good citizen? So yeah, it's all inclusive. It's all inclusive. So I learned a long time ago, if they don't think that you care about their future and you just care about them as a basketball player, you're not gonna get much out of them. But I think as you go through your coaching career, you go from wins and losses and what that matters or doesn't matter, to the significance of your relationships with your players. And so we're very close to our alumni. The best, this, Chris, the best parts of this job are when they call you and ask you what kind of lawnmower to buy. So that's the real stuff.
I haven't had anyone ask me that yet. I gotta wait for that one.
Yeah.
Coach, I mean, this just, again, it demonstrates what a program is, from boot camp to your players and you understanding what creates margins, and then obviously running the program with all these different things that go with it. I mean, it's just a tremendous insight in terms of how you do things. And I can't thank you enough for being able to share that with us. Thanks,
Chris. And, the last thing that I would say is, some of the lessons I've learned through years. I get to pick my players. So as a high school coach, it's more difficult, but character of your players is everything. When I was in North Texas, I got to know Mean Joe Green, and everyone knows him as a player, but he's been with their organization forever. And he claims that Pittsburgh Steelers, and I can't tell you if this is true or not, have done the best in the draft of any NFL team. And he says it's because we value character over everything else. And you can win games as a coach with talent, but you only win championships if you have great character. Great words, Coach. Thanks for leaving us with that. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you having me.